This episode of the Accounting Insiders podcast is brought to you in part by Xero. Xero is a powerful cloud accounting software that improves efficiencies across your practice. With all client data stored on a single unified ledger, you and your clients can easily access and collaborate on the same set of books. Xero's advisor tools and automation solutions reduce time-consuming manual tasks and put data entry on autopilot. Work faster and more efficiently than ever before with Xero. Visit xero.com/accounting insiders to learn more. Hello and welcome to another episode of Accounting Insiders podcast. My name is Gary DeHart and my guest today is Christine Gervais. Christine is you're the founder,
yeah.
co-partner, because I know there's you and your husband, right?
Yep.
Of Epiphany Consulting, but also the lead technical editor of Tax Practice News. And so thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you.
And we are filming at Scaling New Heights in St. Louis, Missouri on June the
7th,
2023. So, all right, what are we talking about, Christine?
We are talking about finding a niche in your practice, why you should, why you shouldn't, how it helps you grow, how it doesn't help you grow, and the things that I've learned from, we'll call it failing forward and developing my own practice over the years.
All right, so that's a great place to start. So you set it up really well. So you started your own practice when?
2016 originally.
Okay.
Yep. And it's been through quite what I would call the transition phases over the years. And so when I started my practice, it was very generalist, and like a typical brand new self-employed person, I took like all the work that came my way. I said yes to everything. I wanted to pay the bills.
Right.
And it took me years really to figure out that wasn't really serving me. It wasn't serving my practice in terms of profitability and growth, and it wasn't serving my clients either.
Did you learn it from, was there an aha moment where you got rid of this client who was such a drain on your resources, a drain on your time, a drain on your mental well-being?
Yeah.
You got rid of that client, you're like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do that 50 years ago?
I think it might have been more than one client,
right?
Honestly, at the time. There might have been a few. I think that there came a point where I realized that, for me, it was certain industries, right?
Okay.
That there was just certain industries that I wasn't passionate about. And the challenges that clients in those industries came with were just things that I really struggled to enjoy doing the work for.
Okay.
So when I was able to remove some of that, and for me, finding a couple of industries or the avatar of the ideal client
right.
that I really enjoyed working with, that was when things kind of started to change in the practice, is that I could find myself having more fun in what I was doing every day. And that really came across in developing those relationships with my current clients in a way that helped the practice to grow.
And about how far into the practice was that?
Probably
last week.
Yeah, probably about 3 or 4 years in.
Okay.
So it took a while for me to figure out that what I was doing just wasn't working.
And why? And I'm sure I would bet money, if I was a betting person, I would bet money that is more the norm.
Yeah.
Than the exception. Why do you think that is?
I think it's hard for any brand new business owner. I don't necessarily think that that's something that's unique to accounting practices, that, for all of us, when we're starting a business, there's that fear factor that really plays a role in a lot of our decision making.
Sure.
In terms of everything is about bringing in the revenue. And that focus, it takes a while for us to be able to have flexibility to have that focus be put on the back burner, and us instead to really be able to think strategically about, okay, now that I can pay the bills, where am I going with this in the future?
Right. And so, knowing that, and having said that, what would you do differently today if you were going to, now it's 2023, you've got 7 years of firm ownership and growth and planning and strategy. What would you do differently? We don't have to say the 85 things you do differently, but just whatever the top 3 or 4 things would you do differently that would impact your business immediately?
Yeah, for one, I think I really would have taken more time to think about specifically what work did I really want to do. What did I enjoy doing the most? We all have stuff that we have, the necessary evils in our business that we just can't get around, so it can't be 100% fun all the time. But I would have thought about, what clients do I really enjoy working with the most? What does that look like? Whether or not it's an industry or whether or not it's something specific, like it's a small business owner with this type of size, it's a certain personality type, like just the things that don't stress me out. Like, who are the people that I enjoy working with the most? And I wish that someone would have also told me at the time, like, you can't be good at everything, you know? So you can't be an expert in 15 areas and really do those 15 areas well. So I wish somebody had had the foresight to tell me, you know, kind of pick and choose maybe 3 to 5 things that you're going to set yourself apart as these are the things that I do the best, and then really stay focused on those.
Yeah. And what would you say are the things you do best? What are those 3 to 5 things that you do best?
Yeah, absolutely. So great question. So I mean, our firm is uniquely positioned to serve the cannabis industry, which is just really an interesting industry, and so that's really our area of concentration. But just for me, the way that I grew up in the accounting practice is our specialty is really small businesses and closely held businesses. Okay. You know, so when I say small, we're talking less than 100 employees, and these are businesses that are probably family owned. There's not a huge amount of shareholders involved. And so the breadth of what they need is more than just help us with our business. There's succession planning for the rest of the family. There might be wealth management for their family. How are their children going to be involved? And that's really our area of expertise is, you know, how do I take this little mini empire that someone has built and make this long term for your family? And that's what our business looks like too.
Okay. And so I'm not asking, well, I don't want to ask specifics about like how many clients you have, but how do you grow from, how do you manage that process from going, okay, I've got my 10 clients, the business, and just throwing a number out.
Yeah.
I've got my 10 clients, they're running very smoothly. Everybody, you know, the staff works well, working with my partner well, but we want to really blow this thing up.
Yeah.
Like, we want to go from 10 clients to 100 clients in the next 3 years. How do you go from 10
to 100? Yeah. And still stay good at what you're doing?
Still stay good at what you're doing, manage it, and not, you know, pull your hair out in the process.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I really think that it's going to sound a little cliche, but it really comes down to communication. You know, so the way that we built our practice with those 10 clients was based off of a certain expectation of communication back and forth.
With the client, we're talking about, not internal.
Yep, just with the client. I mean, it's internal too, because as you grow your client base, you obviously have to grow your internal team at the same time. And I think that finding that same personality fit of people that you really enjoy working with and people who really exemplify the values that we have, and you mentioned my husband's my business partner, so you know, he and I are really on the same page in terms of what are the values that we want to exemplify in our business every single day. And it's really important to us that we attract clients and team members that share those values, because if we don't, we know that that relationship is going to at some point kind of have a clash in terms of expectations. You know, so having communication in place, you know, we've set the expectation with those 10 clients of this is what the communication is going to look like back and forth. This is what we expect from you, and this is what you can expect from us. It gets hard to carry that when you grow and you've got more clients. Like, I can't talk to 100 the same way I can talk to 10. And so that's where it becomes really important that we're bringing on internal team members and we're exemplifying the values that we want them to exemplify, because I'm basically trying to duplicate myself to have that same level of communication with those clients when I can't be there. And that's really like the key to making sure that that carries throughout the firm as we start to grow.
Right. And is that where are you, speaking of growth, I'm going a little off script of what we were going to talk about, but are you in a hiring phase now?
Yeah, we are actually. We just brought on a couple of brand new team members because we are growing pretty quickly. And, you know, we've had to have a lot of those conversations. And honestly, I think that one of the other things that I made a little bit of a mistake on earlier on in my career is hiring more for skill and less for personality fit.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of us do this. You know, we're we get so busy that we're just like, well, we need to offload this amount of work, right? And so we're focused more on offloading the work, and we just need somebody with the technical skills that can do that work as fast as possible. And I think that's a little short-sighted. Like, it feels good to be able to just delegate something to someone without a lot of instruction, but you don't know if that person is exemplifying your values. You don't know if that person's communicating with your clients the way that you expect them to. I've made that mistake and found that really now hiring the other way around for the personality fit and then training on the skill set really makes a more successful team in the long run.
I think saw a quote somewhere basically said, it's worse to hire somebody and not train them, right, than to train somebody and have them leave.
Yes.
And something like that. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a lot of time and expense, and that's where like that values alignment comes in too, because you mentioned having someone leave. It might not even be necessarily that you think that they're not working out, but if they don't share values with us, this isn't going to be someplace that they see themselves staying long term either. And so now I'm pouring time and money into training someone who doesn't align with our vision and what we're doing with our clients. They're not going to stay.
And so you said you brought on 2?
Yes, yep, 2 brand new ones recently.
How difficult was that to find people?
I don't think it was, I mean, we definitely had a lot of applications, but it's a different hiring process when you're really looking for that personality fit.
And I'm sorry, remote or
remote? Yeah, fully remote. Yeah, so that's
adds a whole level of complication, I imagine.
It does, and again, I'm kind of like beating this over and over again, but that personality fit is important too, because we are a fully remote practice, and we're very proud of the fact that we're a fully remote practice, and so that means that we're looking for people who are independent self-starters, and you have to look at how does this person like to be trained. If you enjoy being trained, sitting next to me, observing everything I do every single day, this isn't going to be a good fit for you. Yeah.
Not flying to California every day.
No. So, and actually, one of our brand new hires is across the country. She's in Colorado, and we're super excited to have her be on board. And she's someone who, she definitely has a lot to learn, but you could tell her enthusiasm to have the opportunity to learn in the interview. And that was exactly what I was looking for.
Were you looking for somebody specifically in Colorado, or is that just where she happened
Nope, that's just where she happened to be. Yeah.
Because that's a pretty big hub, right, in cannabis.
Yes, it is. Yeah, but nope, that was a total coincidence. And actually, she didn't have any cannabis experience, which, believe it or not, was sort of exciting, because that gives us the opportunity to really train on this is our system and how we're handling things.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
All right. So in that growth phase, how do I I'm already spread thin.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm already spread thin, just managing, again, back in our example, my 10 clients.
Yep.
But if I want to get to 15 or 20, especially out to 100, excuse me, how do I not spread myself too thin? Because, again, the trap is, well, I can't add an employee without spending another, whatever, I'm just making numbers up, $5,000 a month.
Sure.
I can't afford my $5,000 a month employee without adding 2 more clients.
Yep.
So
how do you
manage that process?
Oh, that is such a hard...
Because you have to have that resource to grow.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
So what do you do?
That's a really hard space to be in. I think we've all been at that growth phase, at one point or another. And I think there's a couple of things that you can do. I think one, we're here, and a lot of the conversations at this conference is around automation and technology and leveraging those things to avoid the burnout in the first place. So I think you really have to look at, what is our tech stack and what can we put onto the lap of technology that will help just give us a little bit of wiggle room, before we're ready to hire that next person to come on board. So that can give you a little bit of flexibility. And then honestly, it comes down to really just biting the bullet at some point. But I also think there's a lot to be said for strategic partnerships. And this is something that, we've done content on in Tax Practice News about how practices can leverage strategic partnerships. It's not the same environment as it was even 5 years ago, where everybody goes into the office and works a 9 to 5 at a dedicated desk. There's a lot of people who are working remotely, who are offering outsourced services, so looking at some of those things that can fill the gaps for you, and while you're in that phase of like, okay, now how do I get to that next step of being able to afford the actual full-time employee?
Yeah, because, excuse me, or we'll be able to cut this, right? Excuse me. Sorry. So full-time employee. All right. So when you go from, so it seems like you would, here's my list, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to add 10 new clients. I'm going to add 10 new clients. And here's the list of things that only I can do.
Yeah.
Right? And how do I get, because that's what I'm struggling with right now is, again, we're a small business. We're not an accounting firm, but we're a small business.
Yeah.
We have a lot of moving parts.
Sure.
And we have 2 full-time people, me
Yeah.
and my business partner. And we have multiple people who are, contractors, but somebody has to manage those contractors still.
Sure.
Right? And, as much as you want to just kind of go, kind of like you alluded to, just turn it over.
Here.
You can't really do that.
No, you
right?
can't.
Somebody still has to kind of check the pulse and make sure things are being done. And, when I look at it in my backpack, I've got my list of, we wrote out, we did a reasonable comp study.
Yeah.
And through that, we had to say, all right, well, here's what I do every day. And you kind of look at that list and you're like, I really do that?
Yeah.
Doing this, I've been working for 25 years. Why am I still taking
Still
out the
being
trash
the one that
can?
does
I
that.
should be the guy taking out the trash can.
Yeah.
But small business, you have to take out the trash can.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I was going with that other than how do I break, or a firm owner,
Yeah.
how do I break from that? I mean, at some point you have to bite the bullet.
You
right?
do.
Just go, you know what, it's going to cost you. We have an outsourced VA that's in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Who does a phenomenal job. And we had to say, okay, well, we know it's going to cost X, whatever the X is.
Right.
And just bite the bullet and spend the money.
Yeah.
And manage the process. Fortunately, the guy is phenomenal.
That's great.
He's always looking for more work.
Yeah.
So that has worked out very well. But it costs money.
Sure.
It does cost time.
Sure.
So, again, I think the challenge that we see in the smaller firms like us, somebody still has to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And it has to be paid for.
Yep.
And I know I have so many conversations with people at shows or wherever where, they are smaller firms and like, I don't have $2,000 to pay the guy
Sure.
in the Philippines.
Sure.
But I think it comes back to what, you have to bite the bullet at some point and decide if I'm going to grow.
Yeah.
I either have to cut something here
Yes.
or I have to make a commitment to spend the money, right? I mean, somewhere in there you got to make an adult decision,
You
right,
do.
on the business.
You do.
Which is hard.
It is hard. It's really hard. And I think I'm like the classic shiny object syndrome, like I want to do all of the things and I want to be at every conference and I want to be good at everything and I want to serve every client. And the best advice that I can give there is just really looking at every decision and saying, is this the highest and best use of my time?
Right.
And does this fit into when we sat down and we said, this is where we want to grow, this is how we want to grow, these are the clients we want to serve, we now have to look at every decision of, does that make sense? Does this conference make sense for me to go to? Am I going to bring something back that's going to fit into, these are the clients that we want to serve, this is what we're going to do with our business? If I'm going to look at a new piece of software for automation, like what is that bringing to the table that's going to serve these clients, that's going to help with this work? So there's so much out there, and really just looking at every decision of, is this the highest and best use of my time? Is this fitting into the vision that we've set up for the firm? And sometimes it doesn't always cost money. Sometimes it's just a difficult decision for us as firm owners because we feel obligated to be doing something or obligated to be working on something or obligated to say yes to something. But really looking at everything and saying, well, wait a second. Is that the highest and best use of my time? Should I be the person doing this? Or does it need to be done at all? Sometimes you make that list and it's like, I have to delegate all of this. And you have to also look at, are there things here that really just need to go? Like,
Right.
They don't need to be delegated.
Yeah. How much have we done? How much are we doing
Yes.
that we're just doing it because we did it last year?
Yeah, or because
the
we
year
feel like
before?
we have to.
Right.
But and trying to look at also like what really brings in what brings in the bottom line for you.
Yes.
If you're in a growth phase, like what brings in the revenue. And if something is not contributing to that bottom line, maybe it doesn't need to be delegated. Maybe it just needs to not be there.
Right. And sometimes that decision is, sometimes there's revenue associated with it, right?
Yes,
That
yes.
you've got to be willing to say, I'm going to give up whatever. I'm making numbers up again. I'm going to give up this $10,000 in hand that
Yes.
I know I'm going to get
Yep.
because of an opportunity that could put 30.
Right.
And it goes back to, and we'll wrap up on this, two things you said just then: highest and best use. I don't hear that talked about in this space.
Yeah.
Certainly as a real estate. I know
Sure.
it's hardcore for real estate, right? That's number one. What is the highest and best use for this piece of property that's going to turn the most revenue?
Yeah.
And then strategic plan. I think as a small businesses, again, most around here, I'd love to survey everybody here out of the whatever 800,000 people, whatever it is,
Who
are
has
here
a
and say,
strategic plan?
who has a strategic
Yeah.
plan? Who has written goals for your business
Yeah.
that tie into that plan? I imagine it's going to be a very small percentage
Yeah.
because it takes time, takes effort.
Yeah.
And if I'm spending time and effort on that,
Mhm.
guess what? I'm not working on my business, right?
Right. Absolutely.
The circular trap of a small business.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just a commitment, right? I mean, do you have a written strategic plan?
We actually do. Yeah, we do. We have these conversations a lot. I'm very lucky that my husband is kind of like very like-minded in this way. But I think the key here is exactly what you just said. It is really hard to give up the $10,000 of guaranteed money for the $30,000 that might come in the
Right.
door. But at the end of the day, which one would you rather have?
Yep.
And if you're going to continuously spend your time on that 10,000, you're never going to create the space for the 30,000 to come in.
Yep. Well, I think in closing, I think the challenge that I've gotten out of this conversation for our business and for our viewers or listeners is strategic plan.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the highest and best use of your time and your firm's time,
Yeah.
or your employees' time
And your money.
and your money, right?
Yeah.
And take time. And are you familiar with the 12-week year or 12-week? I think it's what's called 12-week year. So basically, their basic premise is, instead of doing a 12-month plan,
Sure.
break it down into a 12-week plan.
I like that.
It's consumable.
Sure.
It's actionable, and by the time you get to the end of that 12 weeks, currently, if you think about it, most businesses, okay, well, I've got my 12-month plan. Here's what I'm going to do January through December.
Right.
Well, I get to November, and I've only done,
Right.
3 out of the 12 things I was going to do,
Yeah.
right? But now I only have 1 month to finish those other 9 things.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
No.
I've got vacations, I've got Christmas, etc. So their premise, and I like the premise, is instead of planning here, you still have long-term plans.
Sure.
And you still are building this
But
in.
breaking it down into.
Yeah. Here's your year. You've got 12 weeks to accomplish your year.
Sure.
And you can have 4 years in 12 month, or 3 years in 12-month plan. Is that right? No, 4, right? Because there is a 13th week that's kind of a planning week.
For the next piece of it.
next.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
And the premise is stay highly focused. Again, go to what is your plan?
Yep.
And what are the things that you've got to accomplish in the next 12 weeks?
Yeah.
You've got 12 weeks. This is your year, and focus your business, your growth, whatever it is that you pull from that, to get it done in those 12 weeks. I've read the book like a dozen times. It's all highlighted, and I'll start the process and then fall out of it because I get busy doing something else.
Right, absolutely.
But part of and this is a long story, but what I'm getting to, part of their planning process is every week, you have a 2-hour block of time
Mm-hmm.
that you do not work.
Yep.
You get out of the office, and I think they say it's really like a clear your mind type of time.
Yeah, of
I
course.
think you could also use that for the kind of continuous planning time.
Yep.
But it's all built in. I would highly recommend, if you don't have a system in place, take a look at it. Again, 12-week year is what it's called. I don't get money for that. It's find it on Amazon.
I think that's great, though. That's an excellent point. Is when you look at the highest and best use of your time, it's not always the billable hour.
Right.
Sometimes those 2 hours that you stop and take, well, I have to do this right now. You're gonna get leaps and bounds from that.
And even if you have a partner, bring your partner into
Yeah.
it. My partner and I, we're trying to come up. All right, well, we're here. We've got people here at Scaling New Heights, so it's a big investment for our business. And, to be at a show for 5 people for a week or 5 days, right?
Absolutely.
How do we? And we rarely go to a show and actually generate revenue on the floor.
Sure, absolutely. It comes later.
It usually comes later, and we're like, you know what? We need to generate revenue now.
Today.
We want some money in our pockets.
But what are those goals?
Right.
Looking at what do I really want to come home with?
Right.
And that really gives you the action steps of if I want to come home with X,
Yep.
I need to do Y while I'm there to make that happen.
Absolutely. And so when we did that, and we're right at hitting the goal that we set. So maybe we'll be able to add one more, which will pick it up for us. So, all right. Well, I think that is it. Any parting thoughts?
No, that was really great content.
Yeah, pretty good. So, all right. Well, great. Well, Christine, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for having me.
Being here. Thanks for coming to St. Louis and spending some time on the podcast.
Yeah.
Thanks.